What's up, everybody? Post-Production Pie here with srlounge.com. Welcome to another Lightroom edit. Now, if you've been paying attention, then you'll know that we haven't been posting videos as of late. And if you've also been paying attention to previous videos, you'll know that generally when we do Lightroom edits and post-production work, you guys don't get to see my lovely face. Well, things have changed here. We're trying to up the production value here at SR Lounge, so we now have 3 recording sets. This is our new studio set for post-production work, and now you guys can see me as I talk to you and give you tips. Hopefully it'll be more interesting, and hopefully you'll like looking at my awesomely awesome scruff and Persian face. All right, and we also have a second set outside. It is going to be basically our interview and gear set where we do gear reviews and so forth. We have a third set as well that's in the works where we're going to be showing you more photography tutorials. We have an actual full photo studio here in the recording studio so we can demonstrate more lighting tips and techniques and so forth. So we got a lot of great things in store for you all. Now here in this video, why don't we just get to what we're actually going to be getting to. All right, so we have an image here loaded up. This was taken at downtown Los Angeles during an engagement session. I wanted to talk basically about a couple different things. We're gonna give you a few tips here. First, well, I wanted to talk about finding these different locations. Now, I found this location just by driving around, and you'll notice that this isn't really a location as so much as just a background. It's a random background. As I was driving through Los Angeles, I saw this tunnel, and the tunnel didn't have anything special inside of it. There was nothing really cool to look at. But when I looked up, there was a great background, or if you will, an upground. All right, now we use upgrounds a lot in our photography. They're upward backgrounds. And when I saw this, I thought it was great because the light was coming in, it was bright on one side, it was falling off, we had these leading lines, it looked awesome, and I thought it'd make for a great shot. So when they got in my car, we were hopping and driving around downtown, we stopped for 5 minutes at this spot and got these shots. So let's talk about exactly what the approach was and how we got this specific image. First, I want to talk about the posing. Now, if you'll notice, I actually took this shot, I took a couple different versions of this shot. One of them is just a standard kissing shot. This one is a little bit of a dip. Now, the first thing I saw when I had him do that dip, it added so much more action to it. And it was such a more powerful image, being able to see her hair kind of flowing down versus that standard kissing shot. Now, from a posing standpoint, these types of upground shots are actually a little bit difficult to pull off. And we talk about them a lot during the Natural Light Couples Photography DVD. We show you a lot of different posing, including shooting for upgrounds, because this is basically what needs to happen. So here's my camera. Now, when I go down low to shoot a background or an upground, I need to get low and then shoot the couple and then get the background above them. And I just totally knocked my microphone. Hopefully that was not super loud. All right, so when you're in this position, if they're standing straight up like this, well, you get a lot of kind of a distorted look to them because they're standing straight up, you're shooting low, and it makes them look elongated. It doesn't look good or natural. What we need to do when we're shooting these bottom-up shots is we need to have the couple lean from the hip into the camera. So if our camera's right here, they're going to lean from the hip into the camera, and once they get perpendicular to the camera, well, it's going to do 2 things. It's going to feel very awkward and uncomfortable for them, but it's going to look absolutely great inside of your camera because when you're shooting perpendicular, you negate that little, well, perspective distortion that you'd get by shooting bottom up. And then you get your background as well, or your upground in your shot. So what they're doing here in this shot is not only are they basically leaning in for this, this is the closed pose. So we demonstrate on the couples photography DVD this closed pose. I have her hand around his neck, her hand on the arm or on his chest, being careful to create a little bit of space between the elbow and the chest because we don't want the arm to widen out. Once they're in that, they lean from the hip into the camera and then dip backwards to get that look. Hopefully that looked awesome when I did it and not super awkward like I felt it did. But it's gonna feel really awkward for the clients, and what I like to tell them is just to have confidence. Trust me, this is gonna look amazing in the camera. Don't worry, it's gonna feel super awkward, super uncomfortable, but it'll look awesome, okay? So that's how we got to that pose. Now, what am I doing as far as the composition here? Well, the composition, if you'll notice, I place them in the bottom left corner over the highlight area of the image. Now, highlights are natural kind of attention grabbers in an image in a photographic composition. Our eyes go directly to the brighter area of the image. If I can use that highlight and incorporate my subject over it, then our eyes are naturally drawn right to that area. In addition, we also have these lines on the ceiling, and you'll notice I took an angle that allows me to use these lines as leading lines directly into the couple. So all these lines, they lead to one place, which is love. All right, so we have these leading lines. We have this great kind of overall, well, it's really a negative space composition because most of the image is in negative space. It's in background. It's not negative as per se it's white or there's nothing there, but it is negative space in that it's just a blurred out background. But it works with it, okay? It's because we have them over that highlight area. Now for the post-production side, which we're gonna get to shortly. I'm kind of envisioning a black and white shot in this image. Now, a lot of different things would work, but a lot of people ask me, when do you know when an image is going to look great as a black and white or a vintage photo? Here's what I'd say. If there are no modern elements in an image, then generally it works pretty well as a vintage photo because there's nothing in there that would make it feel weird. Like if I slapped a vintage effect over a modern laptop, well, you know it's a modern laptop, it kind of has a sort of disconnect there. So when the subject kind of lends itself to it, it looks great. In addition, when there's not a lot of great color to begin with in the scene, it works even better for these kind of vintage and black and white type effects. And in the scene we have both. We have a couple that really, there's nothing that screams modern in the image. I mean, they're a modern couple and we're in downtown, but there's nothing like a 2013 Ferrari Italia, which I really would love to own, but I am just gonna be content with seeing them. All right, so there's nothing like that in the shot that would be a dead giveaway. Also, we are lacking a lot of great color in the shot, particularly because we have these kind of greenish fluorescent lights on the ceiling. So black and white, that's gonna be my option for this. Again, a vintage, you can see here's a vintage version of it with kind of a cool toning, and it looks good too. But I think the black and white's gonna be really the kicker. It's gonna be the good one. So let's go ahead and do this. What we're gonna do here is we're gonna be editing with the Lightroom preset system. And of course, if you don't have the preset system, that's totally fine because we're gonna go over all the settings right afterwards. But let's first start with the preset system because it'll help us to get where we wanna go very quickly. What we're gonna do first is I'm gonna start with a 23D dark fade that's in the base soft stylized. Now, these dark fades, this is a dark fade, so it's gonna darken, it's gonna fade, it's gonna be filmic, so it adds grain, vignetting, and so forth, and it's gonna be a black and white photo, and that's exactly what it does. And people get confused sometimes with the dark fades. Why is it darkening my image? Well, that's because it's designed to do that. So basically what it's doing is it's flattening out all the tones in the image and pulling them down. So when we bring them up, I'm gonna go ahead and go to exposure. I'm just gonna bring them up to 1, 1.5, up to 2. I'm gonna get up to 2, and that's basically where I want it. And it's gonna basically create this, I say basically way too much. All right, it creates a nice flattened tone in the image. You can see in the histogram how flat it is. That's that kind of darken effect, and when we pull it back up, it creates a fade that's kind of unlike the other fades that we have available. Sometimes you don't need to fade it, or I'm sorry, sometimes you don't need to adjust the exposure if the image is, say, very overexposed to begin with. But if the image is correctly exposed, expect to have to bring up the exposure adjustment afterwards. Okay, so this is great. We have a +2 right there, and let's go ahead and do a little bit more adjusting. I'm gonna go to shadows, blacks, and contrast. And what I wanna do first is I wanna get a right amount of shadows in here. Now, I don't wanna completely crush the shadows because I wanna see a little bit of detail in their suit. And I also don't want it to be very flat like it is right now. So we're gonna go to 0, let's go to light. Let's see where we wanna go. So I feel like when we go to darken, it's a little bit too crushed. For some people, it might fit your style, having that kind of really deep, dark, crushed blacks, but I'm gonna go with maybe more of a medium. I'm also gonna add a little bit of extra contrast to it. So we're gonna go to a contrast boost, and I'm gonna see what I like here. I'm gonna go to, I don't think I wanna do max, but I do wanna do heavy. Okay, so that looks pretty solid. Now, that's really it. I'm gonna do one additional thing, which is add a bit more grain to it. A lot of people, you know, I have a saying, you can never go too far with grain. Actually, that's not a saying. Don't ignore that completely. Don't do that. But what I'm saying is that when you take one of these images and you apply a grain effect and then you shrink it down and throw it on the web, you have to apply quite a bit of grain if you expect to be able to see it in a small format. Otherwise, we'll be able to see it fine. If we have a little bit of grain, we blow it up, yes, we can see the grain. But if it's small on the web or on a 4x6, you're not gonna see it. So generally, it's okay to go a little bit heavy on grain if that's the effect that you're going for. And that is the effect that we're going for. So we're gonna go to max film grain there. That's really it as far as the basic settings go. Well, not the basic, but all the raw settings, okay? So what we're gonna do is do a little bit of local adjustments, a little bit of correction, well, kind of in the area around the couple. But before we get there, let's do what I promised. Let's go over the actual settings. So we have exposure at +2. We have contrast at 75. Again, we're adding contrast. You guys can leave it flatter if you like, but I'm gonna go with high contrast for this particular image. Dropping the highlights and the whites a bit. We're preserving a little bit of those whites and highlights just to kind of bring down those tones, level them all off in that mid-tone area. We're also dropping the shadows and the black. So we're actually creating a little bit more contrast there by dropping these deep shadows that are gonna be in the suit and also in the hair and the blacks in the hair and stuff. So we're creating a little bit more of a crushed look to the image, and that's fine. I don't wanna go too crushed, but this is okay. All right, with clarity, I'm actually going to drop this to -10. We'll go to -10 because it creates a nice softening effect in dropping the mid-tone contrast. With our tone curve, this is that dark fade curve. So what you can see here is that it's lifting the shadow clipping point. So anything dropping below this is basically going to be grayed out. Anything that's coming beyond this, this is really in the shadows all the way up through the whites. It's going to be pulled down. And also we've brought down the white clipping too. So we don't have any pure highlights, we don't have any pure shadows. And then we've pulled down all the other tones in the image. Now when we make that exposure adjustment to bring it back up, what happens is it compresses all the tones inside this little histogram. We get a beautiful faded look. That's really unlike any of the other fades that we have in the preset system. It's a really nice curve. Okay, I just complimented my own curves. Okay. All right, so let's go down to sharpening. Now, sharpening is one of those things that this is built into the preset, but really if you had it at 0 or just at 25 or anywhere, it's not gonna make too much of a difference because if I zoom in, we're adding so much grain, we're destroying detail with that grain. So having sharpening versus not having it, it's not gonna make a single bit of difference. Noise reduction, obviously, if we're adding noise, if we're adding grain, we probably don't want to reduce it with this effect, okay? So we'll just leave that where it's at. Going down to lens corrections, we do have a lens vignetting adjustment. We're adding a little bit of darkening of -30 and a midpoint of 30 just around the edges of the frame. So it kind of creates a slightly more vignetted look that you'd see typically on a vintage photo. We also have grain at 90, 30, 30. If you guys want more, you can add more. The amount is obviously the total amount of grain, but if you want it to look like there's more, you would increase the size or also the roughness. Okay, I don't want to do that because I like that look that it has at 90, 30, 30. That's why the preset is set to that. But if you want to adjust it, you totally can. That's it for our global adjustments. Now let's go ahead and make some local adjustments. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to kill this little black spot right here. This little guy, he's kind of bothering me. So let me just grab my spot removal tool. I have a fairly heavy feather right now. It's about 81. I'm just going to drag it around this point, and then I'm going to move this up right next to it and just kind of line up the lines in the ceiling just so it looks like it matches. Now, if you have a lot of these, don't do it inside of Lightroom. Do it inside of Photoshop because it's going to be much, much quicker inside of Photoshop. You can see even with that small adjustment how laggy Lightroom can be on these local adjustments. Don't waste your time. These other black dots, though, they're so blurred out that I really don't mind them. That one was just very much in focus. And I think I might need to pull this over a little bit more because it looks like I missed it a little bit. Let me just zoom in there. Okay, that kind of looks a little bit obnoxious, like I'm drawing something that it's not. Please, guys, don't get perverted on me. I say don't get perverted when I'm the one that says it looks like what it's not supposed to be. Okay, so let's go ahead, and that was totally not scripted in this video. None of this is scripted. Does this sound scripted? It's not scripted. All right, let's go ahead and grab a burn. We're gonna go to -0.5 stops. Again, if you don't have the preset system, hit pause, dial it in. Most of these adjustments, or at least the ones that we're gonna be using right now, only are adjusting 1 or 2 things at a time. What I'm gonna do is pull this graduated filter down, and we're gonna pull it down all the way till it's covering the couple just a bit, and that feather is gonna slightly affect the couple, but really what we're trying to do is darken the top of the ceiling. What I want it to look like is that this light's coming in from the front of the bridge and it's falling off fairly quickly. And it is falling off in the shot. We're just exaggerating that effect a little bit more. I don't want it to look like an obvious kind of vignette. I want it to look like the light is falling off. I'm also gonna grab an adjustment brush. We're gonna do the same thing, but this time I'm gonna be a little bit more, sorry, I went to the plus. We're gonna go to -0.5 stop. This time we're gonna do a little bit more kind of selective editing here. So I'm gonna just go pull it up into the corner and just kind of wrap it around this right side. Just kind of create this nice highlight where it really doesn't look vignetted. What it looks like is like this light's falling off very, very fast. Okay, I'm gonna adjust it up maybe a tiny, tiny bit. Actually, you know what? I like it where it was at. It's fine. Okay, I'm gonna pull it down just a little bit here just to soften it up a little bit. All right, that looks pretty solid. I totally just bumped the microphone again. Oops, I meant to hold down Alt, and what I did is hit the Windows key instead. So let me hit Control Z or Command Z to undo that. I'm gonna hold down Alt or Option, just kind of paint out of this center just a little tiny bit, reveal some of those highlights. Great, that looks awesome. Now the last thing I'm gonna do is hit New again. We're gonna go down to a heavy de-sharpener. This is gonna basically remove all the sharpening, and it's gonna, well, really soften the image up. And this is great because I wanted to have that soft edge effect that you'd see on kind of these vintage lenses, these vintage cameras. And I don't mind covering them a little bit with this effect, okay? So I wanna keep kind of their faces mostly uncovered, but I'm gonna cover them a tiny bit just to create a little softer look to it. And that's it. we are done with this photo. So let's go ahead and hit a backslash on the keyboard so we can see the before. Here is our vintage tone after, and that looks awesome. I'm really happy with it. Now, I have a little suggestion for y'all. A lot of people have asked us, what do we do with all of our images? Because we shoot so much, do we do this with every single image? And the answer is simply no. We do color correct every single image, but what you see here is essentially what we would refer to as advanced Lightroom editing. And we save this for images that would really pop with this advanced editing. There's generally around maybe 10 or 20% of our images that are going to have this type of potential to them. Others are just going to be nice candids. They're going to be journalistic moments that need to be color corrected. They need to pop, they need to look good, but they're not going to really benefit much by a ton of local adjustments and all that kind of stuff. Now for that, we have internal post producers that handle everything. They actually do all the stuff from the more advanced all the way through to the general color correction. But a lot of you aren't going to have that kind of a resource. So here's what I would say. You all need to be doing your post-production when starting out, okay? You need to do your post-production until the point where your business is doing well enough that you need to focus more on the business side. But post-production is wonderful because you need to first learn your style. You need to develop your style. And in developing a post-production style, the only way to do it is to really post-produce a lot. So do every single wedding, do every single engagement shoot, every single portrait session, finish all the images yourself until you have that signature style locked in. The other thing it helps you do is anyone that has shot for a long time will tell you that if you understand what you can do in post, you're going to understand how to shoot even better. You're going to understand the best way to shoot a particular scene based on what you know that you can do inside of Lightroom or inside of Photoshop. So it's going to be a tremendous skill for you. Now, at the point where you're shooting 20, 30 weddings and you need to focus on finding new clients and you want to focus on those artistic images, the ones that are fun to do, the 20% that are your signature style, and the rest, the other 80 or 90% of your images that are just nice journalistic shots and everything else, well, you have a couple options. If you're large enough, you can hire and you can have internal people that do it for you. If you're not, you can outsource. Now, as far as outsourcing goes, there's really only one place that I kind of recommend. It's Shoot.edit. They've been the only ones that we've seen in the industry that have lasted this long, they have an awesome client list. Everyone seems to be really happy with them. So we'd highly recommend that option. If you're going to go internal, obviously you need to have enough business to hire someone, but that's basically what we do for post-production. If your studio size is a little bit small and you want to keep it that way, outsource, go to Shoot.edit. If you want to grow it and become big, maybe that's something you want to take in-house like we've done. Either way, just know that we're not necessarily spending 5-10 minutes on every single image that we develop. And generally, if I were doing this outside of a tutorial, if we weren't teaching it, it would really only take me about 30 seconds to a minute. But even that's too much time to spend if you have 2,000 images or 1,000 images to be delivering. Okay, so that is my theory. Well, not my theory, but my viewpoint, my stand on post-production inside of a studio, my suggestions. All right, with that being said, we are done with this video. Hopefully you all enjoyed this new format. Again, if you guys want to learn more about posing, natural light techniques, all the things that we've done here, including post-production, check out the Natural Light Couples Photography DVD. If you guys are interested in the preset system or in Lightroom workflow and A to Z education, check out, again, the SR Lounge store. All right, otherwise, well, be sure to like this video, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Take it easy.